طيب يعطيكم العافية جميعا. إن شاء الله راح نبلش مع بعض هلا الفصل هذا اللي هي مادة الفارماسيوتيكال أورجانيك كيمستري، واللي راح تكون موستلي يعني راح أعطيها أنا وأكمل معكم إن شاء الله الدكتور يوسف الأحياء. بالنسبة قبل ما أبلش في شوية انستراكشن أنا نزلتهم على موضوع الإي ليرنينج أو على الإي ليرنينج، وتقريبا زي ما حكيت إلى 65% من الماتيريال تبعت المادة راح أدرسكم لمدة 4 أسابيع ونص، وراح يكمل معكم الدكتور يوسف لأسبوعين ونص آخرين. المادة عليها 100 علامة، 50 علامة فاينل و50 علامة أعمال فصل، اللي هم راح يكونوا 2 quizzes and 2 homeworks. الكويز الأول راح يكون بالثيرد ويك of the semester، الكويز الثاني راح يكون بالfifth week of the semester. التيتشنج mostly راح استخدم PowerPoint slides and sometimes I use اللي هي whiteboard for explaining the mechanisms. هلا whiteboard is not an ideal situation, but that's the best يعني the best tool that you could use for explaining mechanism at this time. So you might find that if you have any issues, we can discuss those mechanism issues in the discussion class that we usually do once a week or twice a week, depends on how many we need. زي ما حكيت في once a week live Zoom meeting راح يكون على Zoom mostly، وراح نشوف كيف التفاعل إذا بنحتاج نعمل محاضرة ثانية أو لا. You can contact me by email. الإيميل موجود عندكم بالسلايدز، وبفضل لو سمحتوا الإيميل for contact, or if you have anything write a comment on Facebook, on the Facebook group, or a post on Facebook group that we have created for this class. But you should not try to contact me by messenger. I usually don't reply by messenger unless this is something very urgent. For the material راح أعطيكم أنا generally two main topics اللي هم organic functional groups plus راح أعطيكم اللي هم زي ما حكيت organic functional groups، راح أعطيكم stereochemistry and drugs. organic functional groups راح نحكي عنهم اللي هم alcohol, phenols, ethers, epoxides, aldehyde and ketones, carboxylic acid and derivatives, as well as amino nitro compounds. Stereochemistry and drugs راح نحكي عنهم stereochemistry principle and concepts، وراح نحكي عن aspects in drugs. Those stereochemistry issues موجودين بالdrugs in the market. The grading, as I said, there's 15 points for quiz 1, 15 points for quiz 2, assignment 10 points for the first assignment, second assignment and another 10 points. بالنسبة لوقت assignments هلا initially احنا 6th week and 7th week, but we still we could change this. يعني assignment time أو وقت assignment ممكن نعدله later on حسب ما نراه مناسب. فموضوع assignment deadlines is not really finalized yet, and we will decide this later during the semester. Final exam is in the 8th week. It's 50 points, so the total is 100 points as we see here. Resources. هلا أنا بصراحة بستخدم mix of things. I use videos, I use books, and use other resources. If you want books, the two main books that I use اللي هم two books here written: Chemistry for Pharmacy Students and Essential of Organic Chemistry. Both those books are useful if you want to use them. Also, there is another lecture series recorded by UCLA, the University of California, Los Angeles Chemistry Department. Dr. Harding is one of the best for chemistry classes, and he recorded a class that's called Organic Reactions and Pharmaceuticals and posted those lectures on YouTube. Much of the information there, I use them as well, so it's important to know those informations if you need to know extra information موجودين على هذول اليوتيوب videos. From the general organic chemistry اللي أخذتها من العلوم، مفروض أنك تكون عرفت main definitions that we need in this class for specific terms. لما نحكي acids and bases, you should know what acids are and what bases are, and I don't need to explain this again. Topic تبع pKa مفروض انك تفهم شو يعني term for pKa and what does that pKa mean. If it's an acidic compound, what does that represent for pKa? If it's a basic compound, كيف pKa راح تكون for basic compound. And you should know the difference between higher pKa, lower pKa. How does that change acidity and basicity? مفروض تعرف the differences between ionic and covalent bond. مفروض تعرف different hybridizations of atoms زي sp1, sp2 and sp3. And you should know also about bond polarity and atoms electronegativity. هذا الconcept مهم جدا for explaining reactions and mechanisms. So you should know about this very well if you want to understand the mechanisms. المفروض تعرف كمان عن aromaticity of benzene and resonance effect. You should be able to draw resonance. هذا الحكي أنا بتوقع أنك كله أخذته بجنرال organic chemistry. However موضوع الريزونانس راح نحكي عنه more in the phenol derivatives and other aromatic derivatives. So it's okay if you don't know in details, but should know that what is the concept of resonance. It's a very important concept for organic chemistry and general organic chemistry as well as pharmaceutical organic chemistry. We will talk about substitution versus elimination reaction, and I expect you to know those terms. شو يعني substitution reaction؟ شو يعني elimination reaction؟ Substitution, there is different subtypes of substitution اللي هم SN1 و SN2. You should know the main definition of those SN1 and SN2. Elimination reaction اللي هم E1 and E2. You should also know the main definition of those E1 and E2 reaction. There is an addition reaction as well. راح نحكي عنهم later. هدول كمان we will explain more in details. You shouldn't know مش مشكلة إذا ما بتعرفهم بس substitution elimination. You should know the differences between all those reactions. اختلافات between SN1 SN2 or E1 E2 in general. Reaction mechanism, how to draw a mechanism. هلا أنا راح أرجع أعيد الميكانيزم drawing of the mechanism، لكن بفضل إنه أنت تكون عارف وفاهم كيف الميكانيزم being drawn. يعني لما نكتب arrow، شو الارو؟ شو أهمية الارو؟ What does the arrow explains? And does the arrow go from negative to positive or positive to negative? Does it go from nucleophile to electrophile or the other way around? So all those details of how to draw a mechanism is important to understand organic chemistry in this class, as I said. So please pay attention to drawing mechanism. I like to explain mechanisms a lot, and I like to justify how those reactions happen. نحكي كيف هذا الرياكشن صار. The only way to explain it, الطريقة الوحيدة عشان تفهمها or to understand it is by drawing mechanism. So you should know what drawing mechanism look like, and you should get into the habit of drawing mechanism. Always draw mechanism for any type of reaction you want, for any type of reaction that I give you, to understand it more in details. And so these are videos or YouTube videos موجودين عندكم على كل توبيك حكيته. يفضل انك تشرح او عفوا تحضر هذول اليوتيوب فيديوز وتفهم التوبيك in general عشان ما ندخل بمشاكل later on خلال الكلاس وارجع اعيد very basic details المفروض انك اخذتهم بالجنرال organic chemistry or even حتى بالchemistry 1 in your first year and so on. طيب هلا اليوم راح نبلش حكي عن الالكوهولز اللي هو the first functional group that we will talk about. And alcohols are one of the most important functional groups that exist in organic chemistry. Why? Because they are the organic version of alcohol. So they are the organic version of water. These alcohols are organic version of water. The water is inorganic. If you want to make it organic, this is the alcohol molecule. So these compounds are polar or relatively polar compounds. Why? Because of the presence of that alcohol. بنطلع على general structure of alcohol. As we can see, it's an ROH. This ROH is basically just the chemical formula or general chemical formula of alcohol. How does the structure look? This is the structure of what? You should know it's methanol, where you have a methyl group attached to it an OH. This OH is the alcohol functional group. The functional group of OH group is bonded usually or always to an sp3 hybridized carbon. So it's always attached. لما نحكي alcohol, OH has to be bonded to an sp3 hybridized carbon. And sp3 hybridized carbon, as you know, شو الشكل تبعهم or the shape of sp3 hybridized carbon or atoms? They're tetrahedral. They're like pyramid. شكلهم بيشبه البيراميد as you can see over here. So they are pyramid-like shape, as you can see. And this is your carbon over here with that's the black dot or the black circle or the black ball. You have 3 hydrogens. This is methanol. You have 3 hydrogens attached to that carbon, and you have an oxygen as well attached. In an sp3 hybridized إذا بتتذكر من organic chemistry شو الزاوية between الatoms؟ يعني أنا إذا بدي أسألك شو الزاوية هون between those oxygen and hydrogen over here? You should know this from organic chemistry. The angle over here is what? In sp3 hybridized is basically always has to be 109.5. So the angle in tetrahedral atom or sp3 hybridized atom between atoms there that's attached to that carbon or to that center that's sp3 hybridized, the angle is always 109.5. وهذا مهم كتير نعرفه لأنه later راح نحكي عن ring strain and other concepts that are important to know that sp3 hybridized carbon, the angle of that is 109.5. طبعا هون مكتوب 108.9, it doesn't matter, it's 109.5 or 109.5. This is the angle between sp3 hybridized. The atoms is attached to sp3 hybridized carbon. Oxygen also, not only the carbon is sp3 hybridized, we have the oxygen as well. This oxygen atom is also sp3 hybridized. So the carbon is sp3, and as we said earlier, and the oxygen is sp3 as well. And again, if it's sp3, it's a tetrahedral structure. Where's the tetrahedral for oxygen? You should be able to tell. Let's draw the sp3 hybridization of the oxygen. Let me delete this that I drew over here to make things easier to see. And let's draw over here. Where's the rest of the atoms, the rest of the or the rest of the bonds? And now here two bonds that are hidden. They're not usually drawn. These are lone pair of electrons that exist. So these are the four bonds of sp3 hybridized atom. For the oxygen atom لما نحكي عندنا هون hydrogen واحد، عندنا one lone pair of electron اثنين، عندنا second lone pair of electron ثلاث، وعندنا this is the CH3 is the fourth atom that's attached to oxygen. So all of the angles between any of two of these bonded atoms has to be 109.5 as well. So in alcohols, they have to be attached to sp3 hybridized carbon, and the OH in the alcohol itself is also an sp3 hybridized. طيب شو الكلاسيفيكيشن للالكولز؟ As you might all know from general organic chemistry, classification عندنا primary, secondary, tertiary alcohols. هلا البرايمري alcohol هي عبارة عن alcohol where the carbon that's attached directly to the OH. This is the definition of primary alcohol over here. The carbon atom which attached directly to OH is only attached to one carbon atom next to it. So as you can see on the OH تبعتنا, this where is the carbon attached to it? This is the carbon attached to it. The carbon attached to that OH has only one carbon attached to it. So the general formula is RCH2OH. This is for primary alcohol. For secondary alcohol, as you can see, the OH here attached to one carbon. This carbon that's attached directly to the OH is also attached to two other alkyl groups or two other carbons. And so this is why we call them secondary, because you have two different carbons attached to the carbon that's directly adjacent to the OH. For the tertiary, as you can see, and the carbon that's attached directly to the OH is attached to three different alkyl groups or three different carbons, 1, 2, and 3. And so the primary, the definition of the primary alcohol is the carbon that's attached directly to OH has only one carbon next to it. And the secondary, you have two carbons or two alkyl groups, and the general formula is R2CH2OH. The tertiary alcohol has a definition of three alkyl groups or three carbons attached to the carbon that's adjacent to OH. And the general formula is R3COH. So this is very easy and everyone should know about this. The fourth classification that people sometimes talk about is aromatic phenols. And in aromatic phenols, many people do not classify phenols as part of alcohols. بس أنا راح أستخدم خلال الكلاس هاي أو خلال المحاضرات إنه الphenols جزء من الالكحول. Although I'm just gonna tell you this information إنه they're not classified typically as part of alcohol. ليش؟ لأن لهم خصائص physical properties that are or physicochemical properties that are totally different than the alcohols اللي نحكي عنهم اللي بنسميهم linear alcohol or the alkyl alcohols اللي حكينا عنهم primary, secondary or tertiary. So the phenols are, as you all know, the main formula of phenols. You have an OH attached directly to phenyl group or benzene group. And if you want to classify it, either لما بدنا نيجي نحكي لو سألتك سؤال is this phenol a primary, secondary, or tertiary? You could classify it as tertiary. Why you could classify it as tertiary? لأنه الألكحول attached to carbon that has 3 bonds مع carbons. So it can be classified as part of tertiary alcohol. Although, as I said, most of the books, wherever you go, phenols are classified separately. مهما primary or مهما tertiary or not part of those alcohols that we talked about, they're classified separately as their own group اللي هم aromatic phenols or the aromatic alcohols بيسموهم. And these compounds have different physiochemical properties than primary, secondary, or tertiary alcohols. That's why they're classified separately. So these are the main classification of alcohols: primary, secondary, tertiary. وعندنا aromatic alcohols اللي هم الفينول and phenol derivatives. هلا لما بنحكي عن تسمية الالكوهولز and all the other functional groups that we're going to talk about can be named by 2 different systems. The first one اللي هو everyone knows about اللي هم IUPAC system. IUPAC system is the system created by the IUPAC Association to make this as a general easy way to know or define or name the compounds. And they created this system and they made it public for everyone to use it, so can everyone talk the same language. كلنا نحكي نفس الlanguage، كلنا نسمي نفس الطريقة. So we don't have much of differences. مش عشان يجي واحد بأمريكا يسمي الكومباوند إشي وواحد برضه يسميه إشي تاني. So IUPAC names, this is just a general system used to name any type of organic compounds, and they have specific rules, as you might know. There is IUPAC rules for naming. A second type of naming اللي هو trivial name or common names بنسميه. Common names or common nomenclature is a way to just the compounds by their nickname نقدر نحكي أو اسمهم known for their names، يعني الاسم المشهور بين الناس المتداول اللي ما بتبع الرولز تبعون الأيوباك. This is called common name or trivial name. For IUPAC, as you all know, IUPAC names are named based on the alkyl chain or the longest alkyl chain that contains the OH group. This is the main rule. If you want to name an alcohol based on IUPAC system, you have to choose the longest chain that contain alcohol or OH. So this is the most important rule. The longest carbon chain that contains OH group is the one that you will choose for naming. So to name an alkyl group, you should know the general names for simple unbranched alkyl first that are made by IUPAC. وأنا متأكد إن كلكم تعرفوها اللي هم الميثين, ethane, propane, butane, pentane, hexane, heptane, octane, nonane, decane, and they represent the number of carbons that exist. Methane has 1 carbon, pentane has 5 carbons, octane has 8 carbons, decane has 10 carbons. لازم تحفظهم هذول تعرفهم راح يمروا معك كثير later on بالميديسينال chemistry, biochemistry, and other places. So please know those IUPAC names for simple and branched alkyls, and I'm sure most of you know those names. Once you choose the longest chain that contains OH group, you need to number that parent longest chain, and the numbering starts usually from the location or the end that's closer to the OH group. You need to give the OH group the lowest possible number. So this is how you name those alcohols. Number the parent chain to give the hydroxyl group the lowest possible number. And when you want to also the third rule that you want to name alcohols, you have to change the suffix at the end of those. methane مثلا راح تشيل ال E وتشطبها وتستبدلها ب OL when you have an alcohol. واضح؟ That represent alcohol اللي هي OL suffix. So the suffix has to be changed from the simple unbranched alkyl from methane. The E has to be removed and change that suffix E to the OL to make it methanol, for example, if you have an alcohol. So this is the main rule, the main 3 rules to name an alcohol in an alkyl chain. You choose the parent chain, which is the longest hydrocarbon chain that contains the hydroxy group, and then you number the parent chain to give hydroxy group the lowest possible number. So you come always numbering starts from the end that's closer to the hydroxyl, if the hydroxyl is not at that end specifically, and change the suffix from E to O. طيب بما انه حكينا عن nomenclature using IUPAC system راح نحكي هلا عن ال common name naming. هلا بالنسبة لل common name naming usually you look at the alcohols as an alkyl group and hydroxy. So you look at them as two separate entities. The alkyl group itself has its own name, and then you add the word alcohol after that alkyl group. So first of all, you should know what are the typical common names or the common names for the typical alkyl group or the most common alkyl group to understand this. So first, if we look at this table over here, we can see basically that we have the methyl, everyone should know that, ethyl, and as well as propyl. And then we have an isopropyl, which is same as propyl, but the branching or the substitution at position number 2 rather than at the start of the chain. So this is your isopropyl. We have a butyl. We have a tertiary butyl, as you can see. Tertiary butyl هي عبارة عن a group that has 4 carbons and 3 of them attached to this middle or center carbon, and the substitution موجود اللي هي الR group موجود على هاي السنتر carbon. This is a tertiary butyl. We have this secondary butyl موجود عندنا secondary butyl, and it's different than tertiary butyl. We have an isobutyl, we have a pentyl, neopentyl, isopentyl, hexyl, and isohexyl. طيب لو أخذنا just a very easy example, if we look at the structure over here, we can see that we have this structure, for example. So this compound is by IUPAC naming. We should pick the longest hydrocarbon chain, 1, 2, 3, 4, and that by IUPAC naming is called butanol. Yes, it's called butanol. All right, so by common names, this compound is called butyl alcohol. So it's called as butyl alcohol rather than butanol. So this is by common name and this is by IUPAC system naming. And so on. So you have butanol, butyl alcohol, and we can have another example as well after we delete this one over here. So we can pick a more complicated example maybe if we want to do that. And so we have, let's do this example over here. So this compound, the name of that compound, if you want to take the longest hydrocarbon chain, this is your longest hydrocarbon chain. 1, so this is the one that's over here. This is your longest hydrocarbon chain that has the hydroxy substitution. And to number it, you have one of two options. Either you start from the far end or the closer end to the hydroxy. You always start with the one that's from the end that's closer to the hydroxy. So this is 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, I'm gonna delete that circle. And so we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this compound by IUPAC system naming is called as 2-butanol. However, this compound by common name, you have to look at the alkyl group over here. So this is the alkyl group that we said is the longest hydrocarbon chain. This is the alkyl group in this structure as well. And this is, you have to find this alkyl group اللي موجود وين موجود بهذا التابل عشان تعرف تسميها. And the one that you should see is basically this is the same alkyl group as secondary butyl here. So by common name, this structure is called secondary butyl alcohol. So this is the name of that compound by common name, secondary butyl alcohol. بينما بالIUPAC system is 2-butanol. Okay. All right. So there's more examples in the next slide. So in this slide, you can see that we have multiple examples that you should work on to try to get their both IUPAC name and common name together. And as you can see over here, there's many examples, but we will just pick 2 of them. Let's do this, or 3 of them. Do this one, this one, and this one. And I will do this on the whiteboard to make it easier to understand. All right, so let's do the structure over here, the one of the three structures that we decided. Let's do the structure with the T-butyl group. And as you can see, we will do this on the whiteboard. We have to draw the structure first. So this is the structure of that compound. Okay, and so to name that, we need to do the IUPAC as well as common name. And for IUPAC, as we said, we will pick the longest hydrocarbon chain, and in that case, the longest hydrocarbon chain is over here, this one. And you can easily tell that. And so that one will be numbered as 1, 2, and 3. So these are the three carbons. So at 2 we have hydroxy, and we also have this methyl group. طبعا الميثيل ممكن تكون مرسومة CH3 أو ممكن تكون the end of your line. The end of the line is always considered as a methyl. So by IUPAC naming, this compound should be named as 2-methyl 2-propanol. بينما by common name, this whole group is, and let me show you this whole group first of all with a different color. And so you can see that this whole group over here is called as T-butyl. And so the compound name in that case will be T-butyl alcohol. So that's the way to name both, and both names, the common name as well as the IUPAC name. All right, let's take another example and clear this to get the other example. So let's draw the next structure, which is this. Okay, and so this is the structure we have. As you can see, this is an alcohol, so you want to do both. So we'll do only IUPAC for that structure. You don't need to know the common name for that structure. And so for that compound, you can see the longest hydrocarbon chain is easily, you can see it's the cyclohexane over here. This is your longest hydrocarbon chain. So it's a cyclohexane structure. All right, so we need to number now that a cyclohexane to see what are the numbers of the alcohol or methylic group. And so the numbering always starts from the alcohol, as we said. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This is going anti-clockwise. طبعا احنا ممكن we could go as well we could go clockwise and number from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Which one we should choose? We always choose the numbering system that give us the lowest numbers for the substituent. So راح نختار anti clockwise يعني ضد عقارب الساعة اللي هو بالأسود موجود، ولا راح نختار اللي بالأحمر اللي هو مع عقارب الساعة. Obviously the one that give us the lower number for the methyl substituent اللي هو عكس عقارب الساعة اللي هو بالأسود. So the IUPAC name for that compound should be as this. So we said it's a cyclohexane structure. And so, as we said, we don't want to use the E, or we replace the E with O when we do the naming. So it will be cyclohexane, and we could put -1 OL, or without the -1, doesn't matter. We can say hexanol right away. So it could be cyclohexanol, and then we have the methyl substituent, which is at position 3. So it's 3-methyl cyclohexanol. So this is the IUPAC name for that structure. Now let's do the final structure from this slide, and we're gonna draw the structure of that compound first of all. So the structure of that compound is as follows, and it's going to be bromine here, we have chlorine over here, and then we have hydroxy over here. And so to do the naming of that structure, let's put a line over here just to not mix up things. So to name that structure, you can easily see that the longest hydrocarbon chain in that structure is the cyclopentane, and hydroxy will take number 1 always in numbering. So we could number one of two ways. The first one that we can number is go again anti-clockwise ضد عقارب الساعة أو مع عقارب الساعة. Anti-clockwise will be like this. You put number 1 on the OH, and then you go 2 on the chlorine, 3, 4, 5 on the bromo. We can also do the other way around, which is the clockwise مع عقارب الساعة, and that will give this OH again number 1, bromine number 2, 3, 4, 5. So which one we should do? Now in both cases, the chlorine والbromine والhydroxy, if we want to sum up يعني نجمع الأرقام اللي بتنتج من هاي النمبرينج سيستم. So if we do anti-clockwise اللي هو بالأسود, راح نلاقي إنه الهيدروكسي is number 1. كمان عندنا الكلورين is جاي على number 2. This is anti-clockwise. And then we have the bromine is at number 5. مجموعهم لو جمعناهم 1 و2 و5 راح يطلع عندي المجموع كم؟ 8. طيب يعني this is لو بدنا نجمع substituent أو position or the number of the substituent شو راح يطلع؟ خلينا نعمل اللي بالأحمر اللي هو clockwise. ال OH إجا على رقم 1 also. الكلورين yes in that case is at number 5. البرومين came at number 2. مجموعهم again لو بدنا نجمع 2 و5 و1 8. So there is no difference بالمجموع أو in the position or the location number if I want to number it clockwise or anti-clockwise. So in that case it's equivalent. There is no difference. So what should I use, or what rule should I use for the numbering of the bromine or chlorine? Should I do clockwise or anti-clockwise? يعني لازم استخدم الأرقام الحمراء ولا السوداء? Easily, the easiest rule that you should use by IUPAC is basically if you have this case إنه البرومين والكلورين واحدة منهم 2 والثاني 5 أو واحدة 5 والثاني 2 بالتو numbering system, you choose the lower number for the compound with the lowest or the one with the lowest alphabetical number. So basically the bromine BR, the B comes before chlorine with alphabetical order. So the bromine will take the lower number. So we should choose which one. We will choose the numbering system that will give bromine the lower number or number 2, and it's going to be that system over here. So the IUPAC name will be for that compound as follows. It's going to be 2 bromo, it's going to be 5 chloro, 1 يمكنك تحط ال1 أو ما تحط ال1 بس 1 pentanol. Okay, so the name of that compound will be this. This is the correct name. 2 bromo, 5 chloro, 1 pentanol. Okay? Alright. So to continue the nomenclature of alcohols, compounds that contains more than one hydroxy groups are named either diols if they have two hydroxyl groups, or triols if they have three hydroxyl groups, or even tetraols if they have four hydroxyl groups, and so on. And this can be seen a lot in sugars. Sugars have a lot of hydroxy. They can be diols, triols, tetraols, pentaols, hexaols. So these type of compounds, sugars and carbohydrates, usually have a lot of hydroxies and can have a lot of ols or diols, like diols, triols, and other derivatives. The simplest diol we have is what we call as ethane diol, and that is the structure of that compound. This is ethane diol, 1,2-ethane diol, and that compound is also commonly known as ethylene glycol. So it's the IUPAC name is 1,2-ethane diol, بينما الكون name is ethylene glycol. The other compound that's less common is the propane diol, or the 1,2-propane diol, where the two hydroxys at those two carbons, carbon number 1 and carbon number 2, and then the common name is propylene glycol. Glycol means 2-hydroxy. So glycols are compounds with 2-hydroxy that are next to each other. We sometimes call the 2-hydroxys or any two adjacent groups على two atoms that are next to each other as vicinal. So these glycols are called sometimes as vicinal diols as well. راح أكتب هذا المصطلح الvicinal diol بالslide notes as well. You will find that. So the common name of compounds that have diols, these are two hydroxys that are on next to each other and at position 1, 2. These are called as well glycols, and these are vicinal. You should know what that means. This word vicinals means they are neighbors. موجودين على carbons, these groups or substituent موجودين على carbons next to each other. It's called vicinal diols, or they're called glycol. The common one is called glycol. So this structure here is called ethylene glycol. Structure here also commonly known as propylene glycol. لو طلعنا, if we have a triol, this is an example of a triol. This structure, the third structure over here is 1,2,3-propane triol, and the commonly known name of that is the glycerol or glycerine. Glycerol or glycerine هو structure على 3-hydroxy. It's called 1,2,3-propane triol as well. This is the IUPAC name. And as you might all know, glycerol used a lot in pharmaceutical additives. بيستخدموا as thickening agent. They used it for various other reasons. It's a very polar organic compound, one of the most polar organic compounds, because it has a lot of hydroxys. The more hydroxys you have, the more polar is your structure. وراح نحكي عن physicochemical property of compounds a little bit later. But to continue on nomenclature of alcohol, then so حكينا بهذا السلايد عن diols, triols. What if we have a double bond at alcohol in the same structure? And in that case, we always give the priority, as we said, for the hydroxy. And the numbering is always given to the longest chain that contains the hydroxy, of course, and the hydroxy is getting the lower number, as we said. So simply in that structure, if you look, we have this structure, and you can see this is a hexene, which has a double bond, so it's not a hexane, hexene. And we number that chain from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We start from the end that's closer to the hydroxy. And so, as you can see, the hydroxy comes at number 1, carbon number 1, the double bond is number 2. So instead of hexene, we put hexene -1 all, or hexene all if you want to do that, but you have to put the dash لأنه ما بصيرش put two vowels after next to each other. You don't need number 1 here. But also you have to indicate the number of double bond. Hexene, so it's E, sorry, number 2 عفوا, and E for the trans double bond. So the naming here is 2-hexene -1 all, because as we said, hydroxy takes the priority, has the priority over the double bond. So let's say if I draw this structure just as a simple example, and try to test you, see what you think. What if we have the structure over here? Okay, what do we name this structure? Now what we do usually is choose the longest hydrocarbon chain, and that's your longest hydrocarbon chain. You can easily see that. So now you need to number that longest hydrocarbon chain. You always start from the end that's closer to the hydroxy, not the one to the double bond, because this is the one that has the priority. So you start with this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So the name of that compound is going to be what? Is going to be E-4 hexene -1-ol. So this is the name of that compound. So it's E4 hexene-1. So it's very similar to the name, the previous name over here, except that it has the double bond is at position number 4 and it's not at position number 2 anymore. So this is the nomenclature of alcohol if you have a double bond. And we have seen a nomenclature of the alcohol alone. We have seen the nomenclature of when you have more than one alcohol. We've seen the nomenclature of you have an alcohol double bond. But what if you have other functional groups that in addition to the alcohol؟ يعني إذا عندنا نفس الستركشر في عندنا alcohol مش بس alcohol the only functional group، عندنا other functional groups اللي هم مثلا we could have a carboxylic acid in the same structure, or we could have an ester, we could have an aldehyde, we could have a ketone, alcohol, amine, alkene, alkynes. Which one takes the priority? What I mean by priority, which one will get the lowest number؟ لما نيجي نحكي numbering the longest carbon chain or the parent chain or the parent hydrocarbon chain، من وين لازم أبلش؟ من الألكوهول مثلا ولا من الكربوكسيليك acid؟ This gives you which one you should start, which one has the higher priority. This table, this very simple table, this tells you the higher priority. The functional group with the highest priority is the carboxylic acids. So it is the carboxylic acid is the one that always have the highest priority, and this is the one that you should number. When you number a longest hydrocarbon chain, choose the lowest number for that functional group for the acid. So if you have alcohol and acid, numbering should start from the end that's closer to the carboxylic acid. يعني الكربوكسيليك acid لازم ياخذ الرقم أقل. مين بيجي بعد الأسيدز أقل أهمية اللي هو الإسترز، بعدين الالdehyde, after that الكيتونز، الالكوهولز. So alcohols in priority is number 5. الأمينز, alkenes, alkynes, alkanes, ethers, and lastly is the halides. So this is the numbering, this is the priority numbering, and in your, or the naming priority of your functional groups. So in the same structure, if you have a long hydrocarbon chain فيها عليها carboxylic acid مثلا alcohol، مين راح ياخذ الرقم الأقل؟ الكربوكسيليك acid. إذا عندنا أمين والكحول، مين راح ياخذ الرقم الأقل اللي له higher priority اللي هو الكحول. واضح؟ راح ناخذ more examples later on when we talk about the other functional groups as well. Okay, and so to take a very simple example on that priority numbering priority، خلينا نطلع هذا structure, very simple structure. This is the structure that has a carboxylic acid and it has an alcohol as well. So we have two functional groups here. Now, if we have two functional groups, we have to look at the one that has the higher priority first of all. In that case, it's this carboxylic acid. Okay, and so we need to put this as number 1 in our numbering system. طيب خلينا نختار longest hydrocarbon chain, and that has this carboxylic acid and alcohol as well, if we can find one that has both. And so the one with the longest hydrocarbon chain is easily can be seen. This is your longest hydrocarbon chain. How do we number this? We can start 1 2 3 4. لاحظ من وين بلشنا ومن وين ابتدأنا الترقيم؟ من الجهة الأقرب للكربوكسيليك أسيد. واضح؟ من الجهة الأقرب للكربوكسيليك أسيد، والكاربون تبعت الكربوكسيليك أسيد أخذت رقم 1، بعدين 2 3 4. So الالكوهول now is on position number 4, and if the alcohol is not the top priority ما راح تكون هي الsuffix أو the end of your name, and so the end of your name will be for the one with the highest priority. In that case it's carboxylic acid. How do we name a structure that has a carboxylic acid? We add always anoic acid. This is the suffix that we add for carboxylic acid to represent the carboxylic acid. So longest hydrocarbon chain عندنا هنا 1 2 3 4 4 carbons. So it's a butane. This is your longest hydrocarbon chain. بس لأنه carboxylic acid راح نحكي عنه butanoic acid. تمام. Now butanoic acid is number 1, so we don't need to give that number 1 assignment. But what we need to give is the hydroxy over here, as you can see. The hydroxy over here is the one that comes at position number 4, so it's called as 4-hydroxy butanoic acid. So this is the name of that structure, as you can see, اللي هو مرسوم عندكم هون أو مكتوب عندكم structure name اللي هو 4-hydroxy butanoic acid, and you should know now how did we name it over here. Basically this hydroxy came at position number 4, so it's a 4-hydroxy butanoic acid. ليش اعطيناها رقم 4؟ ليش ما بلشنا ترقيم الهيدروكسي؟ لأنه الهيدروكسي أقل بريوريتي، أعلى بريوريتي اللي هو الكربوكسيليك acid. So this is where the numbering should start from, the one with higher priority, this carbon of the carboxylic acid. So this is the nomenclature of alcohol when they come as lower priority, when they come with another functional group that. طيب هلا راح نكمل naming وراح أحكي عن آخر جزء اللي هو naming of phenols. زي ما حكيت سابقا الphenols they are separate compounds than alcohols. They are not divided or they're not classified as part of the alcohols because of their different physicochemical properties. So these are different group of compounds, and we will learn about naming. Their naming is very easy and very straightforward. لما نحكي كلمة phenol، شو يعني phenol؟ It's benzene ring عليها hydroxy. This is a phenol. And the alcohol group in phenol is assumed always to be carbon number 1. So the alcohol is assumed to be always on position 1 or number 1, and this is where you assume your numbering starts from. So let's look at the two examples that we have here. We have on the left side is this compound. This compound has a phenol structure, as you can see. And as we said, the alcohol number 1, so the carbon next to it will be 2, and then the substituent will be 3. So that's why it's named as 3-chlorophenol. هلا conventional or common name of that structure, we don't use 1, 2, 3, and 4 for conventional name of phenols. We use the terms اللي هم ortho, meta, and para. شو الأورثو؟ If we want to draw a structure over here, this is the ortho. The ortho, if you have a substituent, comes at position number 2. So if the chlorine comes here at position number 2, so if the chlorine comes at position number 2, that compound is called as 2-chlorophenol, or it also can be called as orthophenol, or I'm sorry, orthochlorophenol, chlorophenol. Okay, so this compound is in the ortho position, as we can see. This is the ortho position. اللي هي الكربون right next to the alcohol. Carbon that position 2 إذا عليها substituent, or the carbon that's right next to the carbon where the alcohol is attached. هي فعليا carbon number 2. If you have a substituent on that, in this case, this substituent is in the ortho position.
بينما بحالة الإكزامبل الأولاني هون this is carbon number 3. if this carbon number 3 عليها substituent صار اسمها ميتا بالcommon naming. بالcommon naming carbon number 2 substituent بنحكي عنه ortho. also بالcommon naming بنحكي عن substituent على carbon number 4 بالphenol as the para. And so this compound can be named by IUPAC naming as 4-methylphenol or it's called as paracresol لأنه الميثيل phenols in common name they're called as cresol. Okay, so this cresol is a common name for methyl phenol. So you have paracresol, you have metacresol, you have orthocresol. واضح? So that cresol over here is just a common name for methyl phenol. Okay, so these are the naming of phenols. They're very simple, should be very straightforward for the students to learn or try to learn.
So I'll stop over here for the physical properties of alcohol, and in the next class أو محاضرة جاية إن شاء الله هنحكي عن physical properties of alcohols and how the alcohols are considered as polar compounds.